Okay, I think we're going to get started. I want to welcome everybody to this wonderful event. I'm Christine Chow, professor of chemistry. I'm going to just give a little background about the event, why we're having the event, and then we have a number of people that will be speaking today. So as you can see from the title, this is the Bettye Washington Greene Lectureship and the ACS National Historic Chemical Landmark Dedication. So I wanted to give a little background about the lectureship, how it came about. And many of you are aware of who Bettye Washington Greene is, and you'll hear a lot more about her today. But we really wanted to honor her through this lectureship. And the purpose of it really is to introduce students to experts. And so have a keynote speaker talk about their path, their career path, and expertise. And it's really an opportunity for students to get to meet experts in the field and hear about their research and other things that they're doing. So in particular, this is really important for all students, but also we really want to focus on like first generation students and students from historically marginalized groups who may not be aware of different career paths. And that was really the thought behind this, establishing this lectureship. And as you probably know, students benefit tremendously from having these interactions with professionals in academia, industry, government, and other career sectors, and thinking about career paths that they might not have known about without having these types of lectures. So the inspiration, I'm going to embarrass Sabrina. She's really the inspiration behind this because she's an alum. She graduated in '94 from Wayne State, and she's an inorganic chemist and STEM administrator at Lawrence Tech. But Sabrina is also, I'll call her a chemical historian. She writes a lot about really well-known scientists in the field, but in particular, Black scientists. And so she had written this article about Bettye Washington Greene. I think it was around 2020 or 2021. And I read the article and I said, this is like the perfect person to establish this lectureship in her name. And so that's how it started. And so we started, asking for donations for the lectureship, and we were able to get, really good support from the community for this lectureship. And so I'm not going to talk a lot about Dr. Washington Greene because that will be part of the program a little bit later. But many of you are aware that she had a very, illustrious career at Dow. And so we have representatives from Dow here. You'll hear more about Dr. Washington Greene a little bit later. So I want to take this opportunity to thank all of the donors. And we had many generous donors, and many are here in the audience today. And so we really appreciate the support that you've all provided to allow this lectureship to take place. And so again, very generous donations, and a major donor was Dow Chemical. And so we really appreciate the support from Dow, and I appreciate all of you for your support. So I want to thank the organizing committee because these events are not possible without lots of people doing lots of different things. And so I want to first highlight the students because this is a student-driven event. All of our events are student-driven. So I'm going to really sit down after this and let the students do all the work. So first I'm going to point, where's Hawao? She's somewhere. There's Hawao back there. So she's a graduate student here. She did something really extraordinary. So she actually developed a lesson plan that's associated with this whole event. So afterwards, hopefully you'll be able to find the lesson plan. She worked with Sabrina on this plan, and it really focuses on the contributions of Dr. Washington Greene and also just what do chemists do, and thinking about Dr. Washington Greene's path as a polymer and chemists who develop different processes. And as you know, we think about environment and things like that. So part of the lesson plan involves thinking about sustainable polymers and how do we make, polymers that can be recycled or biodegraded. And so that's part of the plan that she helped develop with some of the other students. Ray Fajula, he's an undergraduate here, so he's going to be introducing our keynote speaker. He played a major role in organization. And Fuad Usman, who you'll see a lot today, he's a graduate student, and he's also, I think you were the previous Nobuche chair, now Hawao's the chair of Nobuche. So they play a really important role in, organizing students. I want to thank, I don't know if Ladaris is here, and Elizabeth, oh, there's Ladaris, thank you. Ladaris and Elizabeth from Dow, who are really helpful in keeping these connections between Wayne State and Dow. I want to thank Matt Allen, the chair, for helping, and also Hian, who's somewhere, who helped organize the lunch, and he does a lot of things, helping with the program. Sue White is here. She's Wayne State staff, and she's really helped us to connect with a lot of different ACS organizations around the area. And Isabel, she's not here, she's outside, but Isabel did a lot of work helping with the organization. And Sabrina obviously played a major role in the second part, which is going to be the dedication. So I also want to thank, hopefully she's watching online, Dr. Willetta Greene Johnson. So she's the daughter of Dr. Bettye Washington Greene, and she's not able to join us today, which is really unfortunate, but we have some remarks from her at the end that she recorded for us. So she was really helpful in getting this lectureship going. She helped us reach a lot of different people who knew Dr. Washington Greene, and so that was an important contribution. I want to thank the Wayne State Special Events people, Cam Morris in particular, and all of our guys here that are helping with the recording. I want to thank the American Chemical Society. We have some representatives here from the ACS. I want to thank Mary. She's here somewhere. She really helped with the design and program. And I want to thank the Wayne State Corporate Relations. Dewan is here somewhere. And I also want to thank the ACS Detroit local section for helping with the nomination, and also the Wayne State ACS student affiliates who were involved with, just organization in general, and the Nobuche Wayne State chapter. So those are the people I want to thank. And I just wanted to kind of finish off by saying this is the second of the lectureship. Last year, we had the inaugural lectureship. We had Clarice Phelps, who just gave a phenomenal talk last year. And there's a picture of Clarice Phelps with Willetta Greene Johnson, the daughter of Bettye Washington Greene. And you'll see some of the people here on the right side. I see some of them in the audience today. So these are some of our donors and people that really helped get the lectureship going. And we appreciate your support. And then at the bottom, you can see a lot of representatives from Dow that came last year to the event. And then we have a picture of Dorothy Phillips, who's our keynote lecturer this year. So thank you for coming, Dorothy. And I'm going to just leave it here. Like, if you have any questions about the lectureship, we are still always seeking more support of the lectureship, or if you want to provide opportunities to network with students, really that's what these events are all about. So we would really appreciate your support, either financially or just helping us to connect students with people in the different career sectors, because that's really what it's all about. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to pass it off to Ray Fajula, who's going to now introduce our keynote speaker. And please, thank you.
Perfect. Welcome, everyone. It is with immense pleasure that I introduce you to our esteemed speaker today, Dr. Phillips. Dr. Phillips began her academic journey at Vanderbilt University when she received a BA in chemistry, followed by a Ph.D. in biochemistry from the University of Cincinnati. Starting her career in 1974 at Dow Chemical Company, Dr. Phillips is accredited with 3 patents. Dr. Phillips shortly joined the Waters Corporation, developing and marketing the Waters solid phase products. She retired from her illustrious career as the Director of Strategic Marketing in 2013. Dr. Phillips has delivered an array of different presentations on a global scale and has contributed to over 70 publications in the field of separation science. Throughout her illustrious career, Dr. Phillips has been recognized for her exemplary contributions to the field of chemistry. To name just a few, she has been the recipient of the ACS Division of Analytical Chemistry, Ronald F. Hirsch Award for Distinguished Service in the Advancement of Analytical Chemistry. Additionally, Dr. Phillips has received the National Organization for the Professional Advancement of Black Chemists and Chemical Engineers, Percy L. Julian Award, which is Nobuche's highest honor. And finally, in addition to many more honors, she has received the Vanderbilt University Class of Trailblazers honor. Her commitment to the field is further evidenced by her numerous roles in ACS, and the more recent one, her election as the 2024 president-elect. Please help me in welcoming our speaker.
Good afternoon. I have to say I'm very glad to have this opportunity to speak with you, both for the lecture as well as for the National Historical Chemical Landmark event that will follow. I want to take a moment before I go into my talk to speak just a little bit about my relationship with Dr. Greene. She and I both were in Midland, Michigan at the same time. William and Bettye Greene came to Midland as the fifth African-American family in that period of 1960 to 1970. And we arrived in 1974, the Phillips family. Like Dr. Greene, I joined Dow Chemical Company, but we were in different research laboratories, so we didn't see each other a lot actually in the workplace. But as with many families in Midland, both of us, my husband and I, and she and Bill, all worked for Dow Chemical. But our main interaction was around the family and the community. They had 3 children, and we had 3 children. Hers were a little older than mine, so we didn't have a lot of interactions to get the children together. But I want to stress to you that Dr. Greene was not only a chemist, she was also a mother and did a wife and mother. And both of our families strived to make sure our children were prepared for paths to success outside and once they grew up outside of Midland. So some of the organizations that really helped us in nurturing and preparing future leaders, one was the Midland Black Coalition, and most of the members there at that time were involved, African-American families were involved in that organization. The other was the sororities and fraternities that were organized. Dr. Greene was in Delta Sigma Theta and I was in Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, but we had a common interest, and that was preparing our children for future leadership. So we all worked together towards that effort in the area. The other organization that was, in a way, the professional organization was that we chartered a chapter, established a chapter of Lectureship in Midland. And we were both in that chapter. The interesting part was that we were kind of, for myself, a little bit newer, but Dr. Greene was there and Dr. Dorman, Lynn Dorman, were both there in a more senior role, but they wanted to mentor us who were the younger ones in the Dow environment. So Lectureship was another way that we all worked together. So I will again stress the fact that our goal not only to be proficient in our work, but was to nurture our children as well. And so I Willetta will remember that, and I would hope that we would chat about that, but we will at some point. So I say congratulations to Dr. Greene and her family for this historical moment. So now we'll turn to my lecture. So this is the agenda. There's a lot of points there, but I'm going to move through this, mainly focusing on chronologically for the most part. I'll move from my childhood to high school and those formative years, the college years is becoming a trailblazer, and then working in industry. Followed by that is becoming a leader, and then receiving some honors. But I will have a family tribute and closing as well. So I will say to you, this is not a sermon, because I do like to preach, even though I'm not a preacher. But I can't miss this chance to share with you the solid foundation on which I stand. So the Beardton character in these formative years. I often start my presentation with this slide. I know this is probably would fail as a slide you would show because it has so many people, but this is the foundation on which I stand. This setting is a typical funeral for an African-American family at that time. So very multi-generation. And I'm the little girl with the star by her face, okay? This was the funeral of my granduncle, my grandmother's brother. The family members here had crossed many roads in their lives. For instance, the great migration from the South to the North for better lives. Take a note of how well they are dressed. The expression of pride on their faces. Yes, all women and little girls even wore hats in that era. But there is a lesson that I learned from this, and as I reflect back on it, is the fact that they were resilient. And so certain life skills come from that factor, and that I have attempted to steal and keep with me as I have gone forward. Take care of each other. Be kind to your neighbors. And this is a very key one. No job is beneath you. You may rise, but no job is beneath you. And very important to my life path, live a faith-based life. So the resilience comes from putting all this together into one as you go forward. These are my parents, Reverend Robert and Mrs. Rebecca Wingfield. They had 8 children. I'm the third of the 8. We grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, just as the civil rights era was blooming. So my childhood built in me more of this tool for resilience, meeting the challenges head on as I faced them. The first road I'll speak about as having been crossed was one that my dad orchestrated. He moved the family to a predominantly white neighborhood in 1956. Now, let me just kind of give you an idea of what that meant. We lived in the 1700 block of a street called State Street, and he moved us to the 2200 block of Murphy Avenue. There was one major road in between 25th Avenue, but that road was like 2 different worlds. And once you, below, east of 20th Avenue on State Street, you had your African-American families. But once you crossed that, it was a predominantly all white, for the most part, families. And so he took that leap and moved us because of his faith-based lives and his point of seeing opportunities for us in the future. And it was the beginning of that civil rights era. One of our neighbors would often call the police on us children just because we were playing outside. And my father would just walk out, have a conversation with the policeman, they'd go away. So we persevered and stayed in our home. My parents also were very pro-education. They wanted us to attain the best education possible because they did not have that opportunity. And education above grammar school was often not available to African-American families in the rural South pre-World War II. So they wanted to make sure their children had that. Now, my father was able to return to school. He was called to the ministry and he answered that call. And after he did, he returned to the seminary, which were not a lot of the pastors in that time period did. But he, again, pro-education, be prepared for what you're going to do. So in 1956, the schools in Nashville were still segregated. So even though we moved, I had to return back to my high school in the African-American neighborhood. This was also a time when we were just beginning to have the sit-ins in Nashville, so things were just going to be starting shortly after that period of time. But you see, the Black schools, the schools for the African-American children, were often spoke of very negatively, and rightfully so. We didn't always have the materials to the best materials or the best books. But one point was really missed. The teachers were the gems of those schools. They saw potential in us beyond our color or our economic level. They knew what we could do if we were prepared. So they made every effort to prepare us. Mrs. Laverne Holland taught chemistry. Mr. Richard Harris taught physics. They worked with the National Science Foundation to bring a summer science program to Nashville for the students of color. And it was held at Pearl High School. I was selected to go. High achieving, okay, we'll put it there. But I was selected to go. And that's before that summer. If you had asked me, what did I want to be when I grew up? I would say I'm going to go to college and major in history, become a lawyer, and become president of the United States. But after that summer, my plan was to go to college, major in chemistry, and minor in math. Now, going to college is something I'm speaking like it was a given, but it was not a given because we had, and I'm a family of 8 children, and with grandparents in the home, I was in a home of roughly 12 people. So there wasn't a given. But Mr. Harris, Richard Harris, made sure I had scholarships, not just to select one, but either one of the 2 universities that were available to African-American students at that time. And they were Tennessee A&I University and Fisk University. And my older brother had gone to Fisk University. But I chose Tennessee State University. I would have work study in addition to all fees and tuitions paid. So by my sophomore year there, I had achieved close to a 4.0 GPA, continued high school friendships, including a boyfriend, and made new friends and joined the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. But then there was a time for change. And as I reflect on making a decision for that change, it meant crossing the road to embrace an opportunity for which there was great risk. So when Vanderbilt opened its doors with Rockefeller scholarships available to those who were admitted, I did. I crossed West End Avenue. Now, the only reason to cross West End Avenue before for me would have been to go work in the homes of some of the Vanderbilt professors or other white families, not to study. But I crossed that road to go to Vanderbilt University and to be part of the integration, to be one of the first African-American students on campus. Resilience and faith. An article was written in the Vanderbilt magazine where the author interviewed the first 8 African-American students to enroll in Vanderbilt University, and I was in that. So as I recall that period, my comments in that article were, there were a few of us, so it was kind of lonely. It was challenging academically and also in some of the attitudes I encountered from faculty as well as students. I learned about myself and what I can do against obstacles, end quote. For the time at Vanderbilt, no matter how difficult, was a way to achieve my goal to get a college degree, be the best doctor or chemist that I could be, and become a leader. So I never even thought I would go to Vanderbilt, but with the support of my family, close friends, neighbors, and faith, I was the first African-American woman to receive a bachelor's degree from the School of Arts and Science. It was a milestone when I marched across that stage. That courage to cross West End Avenue led to change and achieving milestones. Fortunately, my story with Vanderbilt doesn't end there, but I will hold it and come back to it later. So the next step in this education road to my education was going to the University of Cincinnati for my Ph.D. I was the first student of my professor, Dr. Albert Bobs, and his wife, Liz, and I worked together closely in the laboratory. And I learned from him what it really required to be a research scientist: sound, reproducible research, publications, and presentations to your peers. So I think Dr. Bobs was more than a research advisor, but a mentor. So the other picture there was just taken a few weeks ago. I had an opportunity to return to the University of Cincinnati, and he was able to come in. He's emeritus and senior in age, but he was able to come in to the university, and we took that picture. So the first is when I graduated from his lab, and the second is just a few weeks ago. So I was the first African-American woman to receive a PhD in chemistry from the University of Cincinnati in 1974. However, it was very different than when I was at Vanderbilt. And why was it different? Because my brother was there, Robert Wingfield, in chemistry, and my husband, James Phillips, was also studying for advanced degrees in chemistry. So we were all 3 in graduate studies at University of Cincinnati at the same time. University of Cincinnati later recognized me as a distinguished alumni a couple of times. So I will kind of prepare you that this next picture is not very good. It's not the picture you would normally pick to put on a slide in a lecture, but it has tremendous meaning. As I said, my father returned to school after his call to the ministry, and he went to the American Baptist Theological Seminary, and he graduated. He wore a cap and gown. And I was only about 10 years old when he wore that cap and gown. But I said, I will do the same one day. I will graduate. And so fortunately, he was with me and able to be with me when I did achieve that goal. So I didn't find this picture of him till this summer. I always had it mentally. And this summer, in some cleaning, last summer, I found the picture. So I have to share it. So after graduating from University of Cincinnati, I became a chemist in industry, an industrial chemist. My husband and I joined the small group of African-American scientists at Dow Chemical in Midland. Crossing the road from Cincinnati to Midland, we were excited to begin our careers as advanced degree chemists. Dr. Dorman and Dr. Greene were role models for me as I came to Midland and began my work at Dow. Lynn Dorman is the other person. I worked in a different part of Dow from them. My takeaway from the Dow was the opportunity to take a product that had received a patent to efficacy trials as an animal growth promoter. So I went out in the field, set up the efficacy trials with Dow Chemical as my banner funding them. So I was received. But I realized how much I enjoyed interacting with universities and scientists outside the laboratory and in a different role. My years at Dow were followed by a smooth transition to Waters Corporation. I spent almost 30 years at Waters. I was hired at Waters to address the biotechnology market and by being on their R&D team to make analytical columns that gave defined peaks for proteins, peptides, and nucleic acids. Most of the chromatography done in those days with those large molecules gave blobs. I don't know how many, anybody remember that? Anybody doing any work in that area? They gave blobs, and you didn't know what was under the peak, really. So this was our goal, to be able to get a much better chromatography for those, for peaks. And I was hired because I had a degree in biochemistry and I was familiar with the molecules that they would be analyzing. So I spent almost 30 years. Mentors and a strong network among my colleagues enabled me to be productive, move up the ladder, and have a positive impact on the company's profits. Just to say a little bit more about the work at Waters, if you've worked in this field of high-performance liquid chromatography or mass spectrometry, you may be familiar with the products that my Waters team brought to market or helped develop. For example, I'll just give a few names. If it sounds familiar, raise your hand, but some of them may be so old that nobody's here has used them. But that was the XL family of products, Symmetry and Xterra brand columns, the Sentry Guard column, and the more current UPLC hybrid columns. And another product was the Oasis sample prep products. I'll tell about my first international travel, which came shortly after joining Waters. I had only been there about 5 or 6 years. And I was invited to join a delegation of scientists from universities and industry to participate in a technology transfer from the Western countries to the East, China. So I had published on the work, and the organizer on protein purification and the organizer of the conference saw my work and invited me to join this delegation. But how could I pay for a trip? It was very expensive, 3 weeks in China. My R&D group did not have the funds to pay for it. So I went to human resources to brainstorm with them where I could get the money. Waters Corporation at that time was a subsidiary of Millipore. So the gentleman in HR suggested I go to the technology officer at Millipore. And when I approached him, he said, "We have been trying to think of a way to get started in China. Go, help us get started in China." And so I went for 3 weeks giving lectures, mostly on protein purification around China. it was an eye-opener for me. And after that trip, I sought more opportunities to share my science internationally. So my career at Waters moved forward pretty smoothly. That was the glitch when they decided to stop doing large molecules and go back only to small molecules, your typical drug type product. And I asked myself, should I stay or should I go? And I said, I'm a chemist. I'm not just a biochemist. I'm a chemist, and I can work in this area of chemistry. So I asked for a project, and they gave me the project of a little small guard column to make a guard column. I don't know if some of you know, this is the column that goes in front of your big column to keep the trash and the dust to getting and prolong the life of your larger column. So you pay $100 or something for this small little piece. But I asked for a team, and I got a team, and we were able to develop the Sentry Guard column, which is still sold by Waters. But that was one of those moves where do I cross the street and go to another company doing bioseparations, or do I stay here and lean on my chemistry? And I decided to stay. The next major point of crossing the road at Waters came with the development of this Oasis solid phase extraction family of products. This is just the basic chemistry for that family. It's a copolymer that is used for retention of polars and being able to be wetted in a reverse phase retention mode without alcohol. So I helped develop the project, and they were looking for a brand manager. I turned to my son, who was at the Wharton School at University of Pennsylvania. So he needed to give his mother advice to get a little bit of return on my investment. So I asked him, what should I do? And he said, well, Mom, the best time to go into marketing is when you know the product. I knew this product. And so I accepted that role. So I crossed that road from being measured on my publications and my presentations to one where I was going to be measured by numbers. That product did well with the team that we put together. And I always stress that because in industry, you don't work alone. I want to make sure to stress that. You always have a team. And so in marketing, we had a team. And we were able to hire a business manager for Europe, a business manager for the US, and I took Asia. So it was successful, and it's still selling today as a flagship product for Waters Corporation. Due to that amount of international travel, I had retirement parties at Waters' office in Shanghai, China, and in Shinagawa, Japan in November of 2012. Just to speak about mentors, because I think I cannot stress enough the important role of mentors in one's career, and especially in industry, but I think regardless of where you land, having mentors is important. So I had many mentors in my career at Waters. Some of them are actually still supportive today. But one of those mentors was Dr. Uwe Neuer, a renowned chromatographer, as well as a compassionate person. When I was in Uwe's group, even though we were in industry, he required one publication, at least one publication a year, which we had to step up to, which I felt I had to step up to. I moved with him into applied technology so we could develop applications, customer-like applications for products. And so therefore we would travel the world to give seminars to support the field. He would travel to the German-speaking countries, and he would send me to the English-speaking ones. Now think about who traveled the most. He had a strong impact on my career at Waters. His interest in the future, our state of being, and my future state of being never waned, even when I became his colleague as the director. This picture was taken at the Great Wall in China in 2010. During this trip, we gave lectures in China. I also was a speaker at a conference in Beijing, but he set aside a day for us to do sightseeing, and we went to the Great Wall. He passed away a few months after that. And so I do indeed miss him, but feel I have to give him recognition for being that mentor who really carried me forward in my career at Waters. So let's turn to the subject of becoming a leader. And I'm going to focus more on the American Chemical Society. Wonder why. I was interviewed once about joining organizations outside of the workplace. And the interviewer had this statement for me to respond to. He says, "You've written about the importance of joining external organizations to advance one's overall career development. Why do you think that's important? How has your association with external organizations helped you?" And I stressed the point that two soft skills were really developed: leadership and networking, really strengthening your ability to network and leadership. And I told her I set a goal early on in Waters that I would be director of R&D. Of course, when I moved to marketing, I had to switch that a little bit, but still the director level. And I knew I would need to demonstrate strong leadership skills to achieve this goal. So my role as chair of committees and local sections and divisions all raised the level of my leadership ability. In addition to my participation in Nova Shea, ACS, Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, as well as my church, the Fifth United Methodist Church, I expanded my network greatly. So when I had a position open that I needed to have a new hire, I had some contacts and places to touch. I wasn't starting from the ground zero. I already had some people in mind. Another responsibility I had at Waters was organize the forums as we went into new areas to bring in customers to discuss that area. And again, I had people to contact from these relationships. So I was also able to link Waters to ACS, first as a sponsor for Project C, and then later for a local division, analytical division award, and then for 2 national awards. So I brought the two worlds together. And I did achieve my goal as a director in the consumable business. This slide shows the roles, and I think kind of have mentioned most of them that I raised from working with ACS, starting with my local section and going to the division, becoming an ACS fellow, and then the years on the ACS board of directors. This year I've been serving as advisory board chair. And then the real reward came the other day, and it's like, yeah. And just as a side note, I have to thank all of you in this room who supported me. I want to give you a snapshot of the 2023 ACS Board of Directors. I put this up because I want you to see the diversity that is now there, way beyond what the 35 white scholars did in 1876 when they organized ACS, and even far beyond what ACS had when I joined the board in 2014. As I said, I was the first African-American woman on the ACS Board of Directors. So that is it today. A little changing because this is 2023 and we've just done the 2024 election. But do you see the difference in diversity? And I came to know firsthand the value diversity played in board deliberations and decisions, leading to beneficial outcomes that may not have been arrived without that diversity. This slide I am so happy to present. As I was reading about those who had gotten a Ph.D. in the time frame of Dr. Bettye Greene, and Dr. Torres' name came up and Dr. Hopkins' name came up, and I knew them both. So I wanted to just share a little bit of how I knew these two esteemed women. I first met Dr. Torrey as a freshman at Tennessee State University in chemistry, but our paths did not cross again for a long time because she went off to Syracuse to get her PhD and I transferred to Vanderbilt. But I would be at the ACS meetings in the area where the Division of Analytical Chemistry Symposium were being held. And there was this African-American lady with a very nice hat, very stunning hat. And she would walk into the room very proudly into whatever lecture she was attending. She would not stop till she got to the front row. And then when the speaker finished, her hand would go up. And she wouldn't ask him one question. She would pepper that speaker with questions until she got the answer she was looking for. So I said, who is this person? I have to know who she is. And someone said, that's Dr. Ruby Torrey. And I thought, oh yeah, I remember her from back at TSU. But I made a point to meet her, and we had many conversations after that day. And what was very interesting was she was at Tennessee Tech, Neurological University in Cookeville, Tennessee, as a professor emeritus and assistant vice president for research. And she was the advisor to the undergraduate Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority chapter. My daughter, Vicky, was at Tennessee Tech as an AKA, and she became Dr. Torrey's little AKA. So the world is small. And so needless to say, she was a person that I enjoyed talking to in those years. My last meeting with Dr. Torrey was at the 2014 Southeast Regional ACS meeting in Nashville, and she died in 2017 at 91 years old. And she was pretty sharp until that point, I have to stress. The other person is Dr. Hopkins, Esther H. Hopkins. We developed a close relationship in the Northeastern section of ACS and in the Psi Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. Now, in this case, I met her through her daughter, who became an AKA at Fisk University in Nashville. In 2014, the CNN article on diversifying the leadership of ACS, I made this statement in reference to Dr. Hopkins. She opened my eyes to a side of ACS that I had not paid attention to, end quote. From that day on, she was my mentor on the path to serving ACS in leadership roles. She told me, pick a committee, pick one of the committees in the governance and serve diligently. Those were her words, serve diligently. So when I was elected to the ACS Board of Directors, she was the first call that I made to let her know I had won. And I'm sure she's smiling in heaven now. She became an ACS fellow in 2015 as her active days in ACS waned. So these are people that I attribute a lot of my drive, my guidance in my path to, and just words of encouragement. So we have more people to celebrate, Sabrina. Oh, I want to make one last comment, so I'm going to go back because I do want to make one last comment on this. The two of them had not had a chance to get together. ACS meetings had become large, and they didn't move around a lot. They go to where their technical sessions were. And each of them told me that they had been close friends earlier in ACS. So I was able to get them together for lunch. I wish I had recorded that lunch because they were both trailblazers. Dr. Hopkins and Torrey, conversations were about becoming recognized as women chemists, especially African-American women chemists in ACS and male-dominated settings. They were pioneers of the Women Chemists Committee. So I want to make sure to make that point. I crossed many roads to a world far beyond the segregated South of the United States, to many international places, one step at a time, through education, a successful industrial career, and even as a member of the ACS Board of Directors when I represented the board in Saudi Arabia in 2019. I'm going to not spend a lot of time on this section. I appreciate Ray's mentioning these periods of recognition that I did receive. But I have to say that recognitions and being honored, you cannot work with that in mind. You work and you do your best. And you actually, I was often surprised, almost floored sometimes when I was suddenly called and said I was receiving an award, because that was, I have to say it, God's blessing for the hard work I had done. This one, I'm not sure he mentioned this one. This is the Vanderbilt University Equality Weekend in 2017. They want to recognize contributions to the progress in equality in Nashville and Vanderbilt communities during the Civil Rights era. So I was really proud to receive this recognition, but I thought of my dad, as several honorees were his peers. And he too had a strong impact on the drive for equality in Nashville, as many Baptist ministers of his era did. And he was my role model. The picture here is the fact that the girls' basketball team wore our name on the back of their jersey that day with their number. And that D. Phillips ran up and down that field, that courtroom with such agility and scored. I mean, wow, you know. This one he did mention, the Trailblazer Award. Picture hanging in Kirtland Hall at Vanderbilt University. My hope is that students of color coming to see, we have the parent weekend where you come, the week where you come and you in it, look at colleges and tour the college, will see that picture and be inspired to come, or be inspired in general. So I made a point to take on summer vacation time my grandchildren to see that picture. And I'm really hoping they also will be inspired. These are things you don't think about happening. The artist was Donna Woolley. But you have to put them in the context that they are not for you, even though they recognize you. They are for the next generation. Now, this to me was a big one. And do I give it priority over others? Well, it was the one I could not imagine anywhere at all. So I received a call from the chancellor of Vanderbilt University in 2015 that he wanted to have lunch with me from his secretary, that he would like to meet me for lunch in Boston. And I couldn't think of what in the world did he want to speak with me about. I thought about the fact that he was a lawyer and I was on the ACS board. Maybe there were some areas he wanted to touch on. So I did a little bit of reading and looking at things, what's going on in ACS policy and what we had. And so I joined him for lunch. And he told me over lunch that, at my utmost surprise, the Vanderbilt received an anonymous donation to endow a chair in my name. The anonymous donor wanted Vanderbilt and me to know that I was appreciated, that my days at Vanderbilt opened the doors for others. We shed tears. It was so emotional. Can you imagine that a little African-American girl who grew up in the segregated South would have an endowed chair at a predominant R1 doctoral university? I can't imagine it, and it happened to me. And I still sometimes only can say, thank God, resilience and perseverance that I stayed the course and finished Vanderbilt. So again, let's look outward with this award. The then provost of Vanderbilt, Susan Wente, and I began to look at resumes, CVs of who would be in that chair. So she finally caught what I was doing as I screamed through these resumes. That the person in this chair had to be an African-American scientist in STEM. Essentially, I finally just said to her, they should look like me and have active research in the STEM disciplines. So all those resumes just went away. But instead, the person who did, and it was through a Noble Share regional meeting that Dr. Robinson and I met at the University of Pittsburgh. And we talked about that, her coming to Vanderbilt. So she was the first that received the honor of coming to Vanderbilt. And then also Dr. Audrey Bowman was the second one. Robinson came in 2017, Dr. Bowman in 2018. They came in as Chancellor Faculty Fellows to be nurtured from tenured associate professors as they climbed towards full professorship. So in 2022, Dr. Robinson made professor. And then in March of this year was her investiture ceremony to hold my chair. And we're just going to clap on that because that's very big. It's the intention of giving forward. It's really, you got to be intentional and give forward. So she is a dynamic professor, highly productive research group, active in community and association, both ACS and Nobuche. She's the immediate past president of Nobuche. Here I am receiving the Percy L. Julian Award in 2022 at the Nobuche International Conference. And the presenters were Dr. Robinson as the president, Dr. Malika Jeffries L., who had received it the year before, and Simon Shannon, the chair of the board of Nobuche. And they give the Quintercloth, and these honors are given, are presented to the awardee. And the last one I'll mention is the one from the analytical division. You know, you move out and you have awards from schools and from other organizations, but the work I've done in the Division of Analytical Chemistry, this felt very warm to me. Actually, the Distinguished Service in Advancement Analytical Chemistry Award was actually started with the support of Waters Corporation, and we worked together from Waters' standpoint to bring an award so named. And now for it to be named from a dynamic gentleman, Roland Hurst, and to receive it after it carries his name meant very much to me. The emotional feeling went very deep about receiving this award. Oh, so let's get back to a little bit as we try to wrap up. I don't know how well I'm doing on time, but I want to come back to family, legacy, and my village. I started with the village, and I'm coming back to this village. For a long time, I could not do this slide. I am getting where I can do this slide. But I have to give tribute to my husband, James Phillips. We were married just over 50 years. We celebrated our anniversary on September 2nd of 2017 before his untimely death in 2018. The person who's often the most strongest and most supporting and understanding mentor person is often the one closest to you, and you don't realize it all the time that they're right there beside you. That was James. We started dating in Sunday school. Through junior choir. But we both were good students. We were nerds. And I think that was one of the early common bonds. We could talk about math contests that they were holding for African-American students of color at Tennessee A&I. We would both be there. And so it was a friendship that developed. And when I went to Vanderbilt, everybody's friend said, you will lose, James will no longer be your boyfriend because you're going to be over at Vanderbilt. He was the most important, one of the more important persons in my time at Vanderbilt because I could call him and share with him the difficulties of that day. And I don't remember what he said, maybe he only listened, but I was able to get up and go back in there the next day. So he was very important for that. We both went to the University of Cincinnati for our graduate degrees. As the students were asking me during lunch, I have to share that we came out of University of Cincinnati with 2 advanced degrees and 3 children. It was a very productive 5 years. He walked with me through, as a member of the board. He attended the board events. This is at Pacific Chem. We traveled, one of our grandsons played basketball all around in the US, and we traveled with Braylon often to his basketball games. We worked hard at being mentors and role models for our children. And so we are proud of their achievements as well. and I'm still challenged to be that role model for my children. This is the game. You know, the pandemic gave a period of time when we couldn't all get together. I have 9 grandchildren. We couldn't get together. So this was taken at my daughter Vicky's home last Christmas. Only 2 are not there. One that's playing basketball in Germany, and one that lives with his family in Nashville. The others were there. And the other picture are my 3 children. One in Vicky in the blue in the computer area. Anthony is a Methodist minister, taking back the heritage of ministers in my family, following the heritage of ministers in my family, like my father and his uncle, etc. And my daughter Crystal is the only people person. She is accountant at a shelter for women and loves it. So I've talked about a lot of women and women's roles in my life and people that I have met along the path. And I would be remiss not to mention the one woman who has been there for me for all of these years, my mother. She lived to be 94 years old, almost 95. And she molded me in ways that it's very difficult to express. She was that quiet voice that gave me the ability to face challenges at Dow and Waters, and to become a road warrior, traveling frequently for business. I was in Shinagawa, Japan, which is near Tokyo, where Waters' office is located. And I got up that morning feeling a bit nervous about going to that office and sitting at the table. And I thought, okay, it's night in Nashville, so my mom's still up. And I called her. And in her reassuring voice, she said, "Dorothy, remember, you do not have to be afraid. God is everywhere, and he will take care of you." Her words continue to speak to me even today, 13 years after her death. And so I go on these journeys with that assurance from her quiet voice that God is everywhere. These are my siblings. You remember the early picture with all those little children in the front? Well, those were my siblings. We all still feel the impact of having a dad who was a minister in the civil rights area with a strong faith and a belief that education is the key, but above all, his actual graduating, wearing a cap and gown. All 8 of his children finished high school. Now that sounds trivial, but for an African-American family in the inner city, all 8 children finishing high school is an achievement. But it went further than that because 3 of us have been in the academy. My sister Pat taught at Fisk University. She's the last one opposite side to me. My brother Odie, a minister and very active in his role. And some of you probably remember Dr. Robert Wingfield because he worked at Dow, and then he came to Ford in Dearborn and worked in Dearborn at Ford Motor Company before returning to Nashville to his alma mater, Fisk University, where he is now. So I said in the beginning there were 8 of us. My youngest brother, Dwight, died in 2020 during the COVID pandemic, and one sister died in 2022. But we're all very close. We're there for each other, and we value that closeness that we have. They are my village. So let me close now. After completing a 39-year career in industry, I realized I have been blessed. As an African-American girl growing up in the segregated South of the United States, I could not have dreamed of the life I live today. I am still striving to live a faith-based life, to realize God's plan for me, and to give that special touch of support to others along their roads. Charge to my audience. To my colleagues and peers, we must take advantage of the opportunities to tell our stories and those of trailblazers like Dr. Greene. To the young people of today, share your stories with the young people of today. And I also ask that you give students or early career scientists the ability to believe in themselves, the drive to be leaders, and the realization of their resources. Their resources, themselves, you, and the words and promises of a higher being. And to you, young people gathered here today, believe with all your heart that you are a high achiever. Work hard, even if the road you want to cross poses challenges. Choose to be a leader, and you will be a leader. Now, my final word, which is a bit of inspiration. Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Hebrews 12:1. Living a faith-based life is not a sprint. It is a marathon. Keep running. Thank you.
Thank you for that amazing talk, Dr. Phillips. I will now open the floor up to our audience for questions. Keeping with our Wayne State tradition, we will take questions first from students. Yes?
What strategies or initiatives do you believe are important to promote diversity in chemistry?
Wow. I can repeat the question for everyone.
Yeah.
What strategies or initiatives do you think are crucial for allowing diversity to enter academia or the industry of chemistry?
Strategies, that's a big word. I think, I'll just take, for example, during my time on the board, we really worked at this area of diversity and inclusion in the ACS and took a deep dive into that. And what has to happen is that there has first got to be this conscious awareness that is needed. And it can't just be you, the student. It's got to start from the top and down. In organizations like ACS, we need diversity, and we are going to promote and be involved and work at it. And that's the beginning of it. And then you start to take those steps with courses like that are important for microaggression, et cetera, unconscious bias. And you form groups that come together to discuss these topics. So you don't do it by itself, but you come together and you bring groups of people together, people who have been specializing in this area of diversity and inclusion. You bring organizations and you form partnerships. ACS is partnered with NOBISHE that I've mentioned before, SACNAS, ACES. And you also listen. You listen a lot. It's a lot of listening. But it takes that kind of work. And so with ACS, bringing those groups together, forming roundtables of the committees within ACS and roundtables of the outside groups and others who were working in their private industry and government to bring together diversity discussions. So it takes that type of, when we came up with an expansion of what ACS's goal was and a goal 5 that really focused on that to put the work into place. So it takes that kind of effort. And so it's not going to be short term, it's going to be long term, and it's going to be more and more groups working together to realize this need. And just first you have to realize it, and you got to drive it from the top. So ACS now has a whole department with a vice president for diversity, equity, inclusion, and respect. But that didn't come shortly with a short amount of time. So I think this means work, but intentional work, and using the favorite or best practices of organizations that can help feed in to your discussions. So I think hopefully that helps a little bit. So I'm just going to say to you, it's not going to happen overnight, but it can if we all work at it. Okay.
Any other questions? Yes, Liz?
Thank you for your talk. It truly was inspiring. You talked a lot about being a woman and being a trailblazer in that way. What advice do you have to young female chemists who are looking for mentors in their field?
Looking for mentors?
Yeah.
I'm going to say you look for mentors and you don't look for mentors. Okay? I'm going to say both. Because oftentimes, well, I guess in both ways you're looking for mentors. Take note of people who show interest in you, who say, oh, will you do, come up to you and say, would you like to go to this conference? I would like to have you present or talk. Or just, how is your work going? Asking you, how is your work going? Someone who shows genuine interest. And when you stop and reflect on it, that person is really interested in what I'm doing and how I'm doing. So you turn back to them and start to have more conversations. And the other is to look for people who you see doing things that you feel are positive. I noted that he was working with this student and how well that is going. He's working in an area of interest for me, so I'm going to talk to him starting from that standpoint, because you can't have mentors specifically for where you're trying to go in your work. Not all of them is that general. So you look and you seek out people that are doing that, but you really try to read how are they doing that. So I don't know if I gave you a good answer, because I think it can be either way. But you need mentors. When you get them, you need mentors. And if I can talk more about that with you, if you got some people you're trying to decide. But I think in general, that's the way to think about it.
Yep. Any other questions from students? Yes.
I'm not a student.
Oh, I was going to say we can open up the floor to everyone else.
I'm an alum of Wayne State, but not from the sciences. I'm from the arts, and I work in a cultural institution. So my question is in reference to, along the lines of what has been happening, how do we foster places that encourage students to see the sciences as an option, or how do we maybe even place seeds or things that might pique the interest of a student? What kind of direction could we go in as parents or as institutions? You know what I mean?
I was pondering for a moment, because I almost would like somebody to answer that for me. I mean, I have an answer, but is there anybody that would like to respond to her question, who have been working in this area and feel they have an answer they would like to contribute to the discussion? Is there anyone? No, huh?
A couple
Okay.
people. Yes, either one of you.
So I guess maybe as a kid, a lot of times I felt quite discouraged from science, but my dad would really go out of his way to buy what I call science toys. In retrospect, it was just science experiments he wanted to do. Like we built like a radio out of a crystal with copper wire and stuff. But the reason that motivated me to keep going in science is because I could see it as an option. It felt accessible. It felt something I could do. So I think when I look for volunteer opportunities, I like it when there's things that I can show younger students they can do it, like a hands-on activity or something they can really see and touch and feel and do. Because then they're like, oh, science is this. It's finding this thing out with my hands, with my brain, and it makes it much less scary. So that's my small opinion on how to do that.
Yes.
So I would say, my name is Amanda Bryant for Younger Dean of the Graduate School here at Wayne State. So if you're a part of a cultural institution that really wants to bring science to the community, you're in the right place. This institution has science running through its blood. That's what we do. Do a lot of other stuff because you're an alum of the arts. But those relationships between the university and your institution can bring science to the people you work with, because we know that not everybody can find their way here. And having those things that the kids, parents, families can touch and see the connection to what science has to their everyday life, that's so incredibly valuable. So pick up the telephone and call the president and tell her that you got an organization that needs scientific input for Wayne State University. And they'll show up.
Okay, thank you for those contributions from the audience, and I think they have addressed it well. So I'm going to go on to the next question. I will finish.
Next question. Yes, Dr. Maddie.
I have a question. So when you were talking about your work in industry and you're traveling, but then you spoke about having a family and raising 3 kids. Can you talk about your balance between your work and your home life with all your accomplishments and your trailblazing that you did, but then having a family on the side, so you're switching roles? Can you talk about what you had to do or your experiences in balancing them?
So let me straighten it. It's not on the side, okay? I mentioned the fact that we had our family early during grad school. So we were both able to take care of the family. Wasn't something that I felt like if I wasn't there, he couldn't do it. And we also made a real commitment to have, one of the things we talked about was having support like house cleaning and babysitters, et cetera. So we did. When we got out of graduate school and had some money to pay somebody, we did. And so that allowed us to not have to spend time on the routine things in the home, but we could spend time with the children. And they could be with either parent. If I had to travel, my husband James had quite a bit of travel at Dow because he was in what was called technical service and development, and he traveled to address the field with support, technical support. And so I did a lot of covering. And then later when I had to travel, our children were actually older when I did most of my travel. And the first trip to China, my youngest daughter was already at the point of starting high school. So that also allowed us to get a lot done. So we worked together. We were good partners on it, on taking care of the family, using outside resources, and sort of pacing that in timing to when we were feeling more free to travel. And in the end, he was able to travel with me to many things. We started doing sending in abstracts for papers internationally every other year. So that way we got a chance to travel. So by having our family young, they were able to get older and we could be free to do things and still be active in our career. So it worked.
Dr. Fowler.
Yeah, amazing talk. Oftentimes when we think of trailblazers and pioneers, we speak about all of the challenges and obstacles that are overcome, but do you have a favorite moment or a favorite positive memory of being a trailblazer that you could share rather than just a challenge?
Favorite moment. Not a challenge. Well, I think about the University of Cincinnati because, I had no idea till I left Cincinnati that I had been the first African-American woman to graduate from there. I had no clue. And then they had a Department of Women's Studies that just wanted to recognize me as the first. And I was like, are you sure? So, yeah. And so there's no memories other than the fact that I went there, I worked hard, my husband and I both, and my brother even, and we graduated. So it was all positive. And you saw the picture with my advisor, Dr. Bob's. I was his first student, so we had a lot of fun. I mean, he was demanding, but we had a lot of fun. Yeah. So I don't quite have that. Vanderbilt is this no.
Gary.
Great talk. I'll harken back to our last little discussion we had, which was really nice. We had great input. So how do you feel like, for you and you mentioned it, but you didn't go into like super detail. For your family, how did you instill kind of the importance of education, to your children? Because I think, going back to your question, the most important thing is kind of making sure that we make, this desire to learn and kind of understand it, make it seem like it's something that's achievable and make it feel more of a routine in your life. So how did you kind of instill that in your children? And, maybe we can still some same advice.
I don't know if you're going to like this answer. They knew they had no choice but to go to school. And you know, it was one point, my youngest daughter was in a school that had a program where they brought city children to the suburbs to go to school. So that essentially, most of the African-American children came from Boston. And we went up to the school, and the teacher, one of the teachers says, "Oh, we're surprised you're here. You had to come all the way out of Boston and get out for your job." I said, "Excuse me." I said, "I live down the street, and anytime my daughter's not doing what she needs to do in this classroom, I'm here in 5 minutes." So, I mean, I think it was so seriously, we went to the teacher conferences. We support, if they were doing something at school that a parent could attend, we went with them to attend those programs. And homework, if we knew they had it, they did it. They got it done. And the subject of college was always being discussed, where you're going to go to college and what you're going to major in. It was always being discussed in the home. So, you know, so that was just that plan. And fortunately, they followed that plan. They all went through and did their undergraduate degrees. My oldest daughter has 1 master's. My son, I think, has 2 in business and in School of Divinity. My older daughter's in computer science. And so, yeah, that's how it was.
Any more questions from the audience? If not, I can ask one.
Okay.
What does it feel like to be the first Black woman to be elected president-elect of ACS?
I'm still digesting that. But it feels great. It feels ecstatic. It's great. I feel blessed and highly favored by my Heavenly Father. And I'm looking forward to the work. And Dr. here, so she knows the work. So, yeah.
Yep. Well, that will wrap up our questions. I'm very happy to present a small token of our appreciation to Dr. Phillips. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. I think I picked up your-
All right, thank you very much. We're going to shift gears now. We have a little bit, so the next part of the program is the dedication. And I know many of you are excited to hear about the ACS National Historic Chemical Landmark dedication. And I'm going to turn it over to Fawad. He's going to come down and he's going to introduce each of our speakers. I'm just going to leave that up there. Let me actually pull up Matt's.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips, for a wonderful speech. And thank you all for being here today. So now we'll move to the second half of today's program. I'd like to welcome you all to the ACS National Historic Chemical Landmark dedication in honor of Dr. Bettye Washington Greene, who was the first Ph.D. woman Ph.D. chemist hired at Dow. And I would like to invite Dean Atwell, Professor Dr. Dean Atwell, who is the Dean of College of Liberal Arts and Science at Wayne State University. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's been a wonderful afternoon, and I'm delighted to welcome you here today to celebrate the dedication of the American Chemical Society newest National Historic Chemical Landmark, which commemorates major achievements in the history of chemistry sciences. This event honors the legacy of Dr. Bettye Washington Greene, a prominent alumni of Wayne State University's Department of Chemistry, a leader in the field of polymer chemistry, and most significantly, the first African-American woman with a PhD in chemistry to be hired at Dow Chemical. Under the American Chemical Society's National Historic Chemical Landmarks Program, contributions to chemistry and society are recognized. The ASC has recognized a number of prominent Black women to earn the number of prominent chemists, Black chemists, with landmark designation, including Marie Maynard Daly, the first Black woman to earn a PhD in chemistry in the United States, and George Washington Carver, one of the most influential Black scientists in the 21st century. We are extremely proud to have a graduate of Wayne State University's Department of Chemistry, Dr. Bettye Washington Greene, be recognized for her important achievements. We are grateful to the American Chemical Society for selecting Dr. Washington Greene for this honor, and to the Detroit and Midland chapters of the ASC for making the nomination. Finally, I want to thank the many donors and contributors who made this event possible. There's such incredible support that there are too many donors to name, but I will name a few. The Dow Chemical Company Foundation, I know there's a few of you out there. The Jenkins Family Foundation, Neil Hawkins, the Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, importantly, Professor Christy Chow, who is a fantastic, creative female chemist with a heart, and that's a theme here. And finally, I want to thank Dr. Phillips. That was one of my favorite chemistry lectures ever. I know you're going to be a great president because you have the values of take care of family, be kind to neighbors, no job is beneath you, have a team, mentors, and keep the faith. We need more presidents like you.
Thank you, Dean Atwell. Next, we have Dr. Sabrina Collins, who is also an illustrious alumna of our department. And she's also the executive director of STEM at Lawrence Technological University. So thank you. Welcome, Dr. Sabrina Collins.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor, and I'm just really humbled to be here celebrating this incredible woman and a trailblazer, Dr. Bettye Washington Greene. And so what I really want to do is have a very brief conversation about how we brought her story into the classroom at Lawrence Tech. And so back in January of last year, so myself and two of my wonderful colleagues, Dr. Tiffany Steele, who's a assistant professor at University of Rochester, and Dr. Michelle Nelson, who's now an associate vice president at Mott College, we received a mini grant from the National Science Foundation for the Lewis Stokes program to really explore this idea of using storytelling in the classroom. And so we were basically focusing on a course that I was teaching. It's a social science seminar course with the theme Equity and History of Science. And I absolutely love chemistry and I love history. And so this course also is a CRE course. And so I know many of you are familiar with that course-based undergraduate research experiences where all students in a class can engage in some research project. Now, what I'm showing here on this slide is really the three pillars of CRE at Lawrence Tech. And this is an illustration from a recent paper that was published by my colleagues at Lawrence Tech. And it's focusing on three things. One, the discovery of scholarly practices, basically coming up with new questions and answers for those questions. Inclusive collaboration, where you're highlighting the contributions of everybody, and especially those from historically underrepresented groups, and communication of relevance. So that's kind of our framework for these courses. But our work is also, the storytelling work that we do is actually grounded in this Bell and Roberts storytelling project model. And the idea is that you are able to create a storytelling community, but you use different types of stories for engagement. And so they define stock stories as those kinds of stories that are important to society and mainstream. These concealed stories, they exist alongside the stock stories, but they're not as well known. Resistance stories, so those celebrate the heroes and sheroes as they go through their challenges with dealing with discrimination and racism, sexism, and those kinds of things. And then you have these new emerging stories that are developed in this new community that could essentially lead to either action or change. So that's kind of our framework for the course. And so what's interesting about this class is that there were no science majors in this class. These were all engineers and architects, so that made it very interesting for me to teach the class. And there wasn't a traditional final exam in the class. The students all had to write, direct, and produce their own 5-minute narrative film focused on either a STEM topic and bring in some aspects of DEI. And we had 2 books that were required for reading, which I think are brilliant books. The Alchemy of Us by Dr. Alyssa Ramirez focuses on inclusive stories in science. And we actually had her visit with us virtually during our class. And so the students were so excited to have a published author talk with them. And one of the students said to me, "Oh my God, I've never met a published author before. I mean, I know you, Dr. Collins, but this is a published author." I'm like, okay, boy, okay. So having her come to class, and then also Hidden Figures, which is also just a brilliant book, and I love the film. So those were the 2 required readings for the class. And so with this class, so we actually screened 4 different chemistry films. One being Forgotten Genius, that celebrates the story of the awesome Dr. Percy Julian, 20 Whites and One Other, celebrating Dr. St. M. O'Brady. And then the story on Dr. Bettye Washington Greene, which you'll see a little bit later, Inclusive Stories in Science. And then the Ball Method, which celebrates Alice Augusta Ball. And so, and what we would do after the students would screen these films, they would write a reflection. And we'd ask them to either write down the main idea or one question that comes to mind. And so we would basically look for emerging themes. And some of these themes were dealing with challenges, navigating STEM, and particularly in Dr. Julian's case, racism. And so we actually watched the film, and it was just really, really fascinating. Regarding the Ball Method about Alice Augusta Ball, one of the things that the students kept talking about, which they really honed in on, is this idea of somebody stealing somebody else's work and getting credit for it. And so to us, that demonstrated that the students, were demonstrating both empathy and sympathy for Alice Augusta Ball, but also recognizing that we do sometimes have inequities within STEM. And so one of the things that we did in the class is I basically, the students had a chance to screen this new film that was written, directed, and produced by my former student, Logan Danaher, about Dr. Bettye Washington Greene. And so what's really nice about the film, and I love the film, and I think Logan did an amazing job, is that you'll see an interview with her daughter, Dr. Willetta Green Johnson, as well. And so the film is actually based on a book chapter that I published in a recent ACS Symposium series book. And I'm just so thankful to all of the contributing authors. And so we offer teaching strategies really for broadening an image of a scientist within the classroom. And at the end of each chapter are lesson plans that educators can use. So general chemistry, inorganic chemistry, organic chemistry. I, of course, think inorganic chemistry is the best discipline ever, which it is. And I know the organic chemists are going, boo, so what? So you can only count to number 4. So I said it. Yes, I did. Okay. And so in thinking about Dr. Bettye Washington Greene, she was an incredible trailblazer, coming from a native of Texas, earning her undergraduate degree from Tuskegee University, which is an HBCU, Historically Black College and University in Alabama. And the HBCUs are incredibly important institutions of higher learning. And then coming to Detroit in 1960 and enrolling in a graduate program here. And in 1965, earning her PhD, becoming the 5th African-American woman overall to earn a PhD in chemistry. And that's a wonderful historical fact, but that's not why she's important. She's important because of her incredible scientific contributions, just like anyone else. And in 1965, she joined Dow, becoming the first African-American woman with a PhD in chemistry hired in any industry, actually, in Midland, Michigan. And she has many accolades, published a number of papers and registered patents. But her family legacy in STEM, I thought was just really fascinating, because you don't really see a lot of mothers and daughters earning PhDs in STEM fields, let alone chemistry and physics. So I just think that's really incredibly fascinating. So we screened the film in the class with the students, and some of the students offered their reflections, and one particular student was really trying to understand why she came to Detroit in the first place to enroll at Wayne State, because she came from the South and did her undergraduate work at Tuskegee. One of the things that I pointed out to the student is that during her time, African Americans couldn't, they would earn their undergraduate degrees from HBCUs, but they had to come up north and pursue further education. So that was an obstacle for her, but she came up here. And the thing is, at that time, Wayne State was the leading producer of African Americans earning PhDs in chemistry. So that's one of the reasons why she came here. And so what we ended up doing after the class was over, we put together a manuscript and submitted it to the Journal of Chemical Education in January, and it was finally published in June. And just some key results. So one of the things that we identified, of course, is that these films had a positive impact on all of the students in the classroom. It made learning so much fun. The class was very entertaining. And critical thinking thrived because the students would learn some knowledge from these films, and then they're coming up with these questions, which made it really interesting. And we had 12 brand new films that were actually screened on the last day of class. And so 3 of the students gave us permission to place their films on the STEM education website at Lawrence Tech. And so that's the publication. And yeah, I did talk a little bit about vibranium in this article, but I won't discuss that here today. And so back in fall of 2022, and I'm so thankful to Dr. Christine Chow and Dr. Matt Allen and also Dr. Mark Jones, because we put together a nomination packet and submitted it to the ACS National Historic Chemical Landmarks program. And it was approved, I want to say back in December, I think, of last year. And so that's one of the, so I'm just so excited that this has actually become she's actually being recognized with a National Historic Chemical Landmark. And if you go to the landmarks page, you'll see a wonderful write-up about her. And as Dr. Chow mentioned, so I had an opportunity to work with Hwao. We put together a lesson plan that'll hopefully be published soon for educators to actually use in the classroom. And one of the things that I do want to mention, what's important about her is that what she did was she invented improvement processes that led to commercial products in the paper and carpet industries. That's why she's important. Her contributions led to many commercial products. What I also want to mention as well is Dr. Bettye Jones, who is a historian and just a trailblazer in Midland. And one of the things about her is that when I was working on preparing my book chapter, I was talking to her daughter and I was asking for some potential, could she put me in contact with some folks that actually knew her mother to really put this chapter together. And so she put me in contact with Dr. Jones, and I emailed her and said, hey, I'm writing this book chapter about your friend, Dr. Bettye Washington Greene. Can we chat? And what she ended up doing immediately is sending me this email of a list of all of the African Americans chemists that had been hired by Dow and Dow Corning, really from the period of like 1960 to 1989. And so beginning with Dr. Lynn Dorman. And of course, Dr. Phillips is one of the ones that was listed in that email. And so everything is really coming full circle. And what I do want to mention is that, because I want to be able to tell her story and many other stories to as many young people as possible. So I was recently selected as a fellow with the Science History Institute in Philadelphia. So I'm going to be organizing the Gordon Kane Conference in 2024. Well, I get a chance to explore storytelling as pedagogy, basically using these historical biographies in the classroom. So we're inviting teachers from the Detroit Public Schools, Southfield Public Schools to attend this. And I'm interested in learning from them and thinking about the best ways to align these stories with the content that they teach in the classroom. And so finally, what I'll say is that Dr. Greene, she's just a tremendous inspiration. She made enormous contributions to society. And these narrative films, I really do believe, have academic value. You can use these kinds of films when you're teaching. And finally, what I will say is that I do think Dr. Bettye Washington Greene was like the Shuri of her time, if you will, making connect. Because the thing is, it's important if you tell a compelling story to a student about somebody that looks like them, that has done something in society that may be the catalyst that they need, where they can say, you know what, STEM is for me, because I can see that they did it. And so with that, I'll close, and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Sabrina Collins. Next, we have a thesis handover ceremony. And to do that, I'll call on Dr. Matthew Wallen, Professor and Chair, Department of Chemistry, Wayne State University. Thank you.
You can just leave the slide up when you're done, too. This is the right one.
Gave away all my slides.
Sorry.
It's okay. All right. Well, I thank you to everyone who's participating in this, and it's really an honor to be able to participate in this myself. And so I want to just show a couple of slides here to show how Dr. Washington Greene's legacy has been inspiring beyond this lecture series that we have. And so last year at the inaugural lecture series, some representatives from Dow came down, and I was giving them a tour of the chemistry department, and we were having lunch before the talks. And Dave Perillo from Dow was very impressed that the undergraduates do so much undergraduate research here, and by the diversity of our students. He was telling me about these 4 pillars of Dow. I think they're sustainability, customer service, innovation, and diversity, or close to the 4. Yeah. And so, no notes. Yes. And so he said, I would really like to support this. And he made a very generous donation to support an undergraduate research event. And Professor Nancy Wu on the right, I asked her to organize this, and she did a fantastic job. And she had students from, not just chemistry, but all over the university present research. And we had some folks from Dow come down, and they gave a keynote talk and a career panel to sort of tell the students about different career paths in Dow. And it was just a fantastic event. And really, it's a tribute to Dr. Washington Greene and really inspired from that. And that's what I wanted to share from this. And here's some pictures from the event that happened in September. You can see some Dow folks in the bottom, and there was some of the gift we used for awards for the students. And so you can see some of the award winners from the posters there. And to really thank Dow for that, I'd like to call up Tim Stemler to help me with this. It's heavy. And then yes. So this is Dr. Washington Greene's thesis, or a copy of it. And if you get a chance to look through it, if you're born after a certain date, you might not appreciate that this is like typewriter and stencils. Very impressive. And so we are going to invite Dr. Alveda Williams, who's in charge of the Pillar of Diversity at Dow. And we'd like to give her this as a symbol of our appreciation to Dow. I don't know who's taking the picture.
The guy with the legit camera.
Actually me, but I don't know.
Yep. All right, and all right, Flaunt, back to you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, Dr. Allen. Next, we have Dr. Angela Wilson, 2023 immediate past president of American Chemical Society and Anna Distinguished Professor of Michigan State University.
Well, you know, I really appreciate the opportunity to celebrate with you today. And I was so delighted. I've been really looking forward to this event. It's always a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to celebrate any chemical landmark, but particularly to have one in the state of Michigan is just really a delight. And then icing on the cake to have Dorothy Phillips be our newly elected ACS president. So I want to give her a hand again. I'm just so excited. So I am so delighted to be here and to join you as we celebrate yet another one of the newest National Historic Chemical Landmarks. This one's particularly special not only because it's in Michigan, it's the 100th one. Oh. Yes. So it's definitely one that I think everyone will remember. As the immediate past president of the American Chemical Society, I often speak with students, the public, and policymakers about the significant contributions that chemistry has made to our world and to our lives. Science is a subject that always can seem so intimidating to so many people, but one way we can make a difference, as an earlier speaker mentioned, these stories. The stories are so incredibly important, and to be able to share the stories of scientists, the scientists who've come before us, really, and those who've made such major innovations really can have such an incredible impact on all of us. There are many scientists and innovations that we can consider. For example, Lavoisier helped frame the principles of modern chemistry. Despite these significant contributions, however, his life did take a rather negative turn. His life did actually involve significant drama as he was beheaded during the French Revolution. Or consider the role of chemists in the development of combination therapies for HIV, a breakthrough treatment that has saved millions of lives. Or here in Michigan, because I like to talk about Michigan ones, it happens to be at my own institution, Michigan State University, the discovery of cisplatin and carboplatin, two of the most common treatments for cancer. Indeed, we have so much going on across Michigan. Of course, those of us who are champions of science can only reach so many people directly, so other channels are needed to convey the importance of science and engineering in our lives. One very important channel is via the ACS National Historic Chemical Landmarks Program, which celebrates major advances in the chemical sciences that have shown a significant benefit to society and the chemical profession. Since the program was launched in 1992, ACS has designated 99 landmarks worldwide. Some of these previous designations have honored the invention of products such as Polaroid instant photography, Scotch tape, Tide detergent, and nylon, and the contributions of such notable figures in history as Joseph Priestley, the discoverer of oxygen, Rachel Carson, an environmentalist and the author of Silent Spring, whose work inspired the formation of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and a nationwide ban on DDT and other pesticides, spawning greater attention towards environmental impact. And Thomas Edison, who was actually a chemist. A landmark in his honor is located near here, At the Henry Ford Museum, Greenwich Village, where one of the laboratories has been preserved. Through today's National Historic Chemical Landmark designation, we salute Bettye Washington Greene, who is a pioneer in her own right, as we've already heard. She was the 5th Black woman to earn a Ph.D. in chemistry in the U.S. Her doctorate was awarded here at Wayne State University in 1965. That same year, when Dr. Washington Greene began her career as a research scientist at the Dow Chemical Company of Midland. She became the first female Black American Ph.D. chemist, as you've heard, hired in the chemical industry. Her tenure at Dow opened the doors for other researchers of color. Honoring her achievements is particularly meaningful as we consider the challenges that she must have encountered at that point of our history. And I'm just amazed that she was able to get an undergraduate degree in 1955 in the state of Alabama, because I went to high school in Alabama, and I can tell you that in the 1980s, it was not the most welcoming of environments. And so I cannot even imagine how it was in the 1950s. One of the core values of the American Chemical Society is diversity, equity, inclusion, and respect, recognizing and celebrating the great successes and innovations that arise from people of all backgrounds, perspectives, experiences, and ideas. ACS is a big supporter of building diverse pipelines of future generations of scientists and engineers. As an example, our Project Seed program provides opportunities for economically disadvantaged junior and senior high school students to participate in summer research in academic and industrial labs. We also have the ACS Scholars Program, which provides scholarships to undergraduate students from historically underrepresented groups who plan to pursue chemistry-related careers. And ACS's Bridge program is an effort to increase the numbers of chemical scientists, PhDs, awarded to students from underrepresented populations. As an aside, I encourage you to reach out to ACS if you are interested in any of these opportunities or know of any students who would be great candidates for this program. And of course, right here at Wayne State, there are numerous programs designed to embrace diversity. Of course, today's program, honoring Bettye Washington Greene, the Endowed Memorial Lecture Series, which is a part of today's celebration. Bettye Washington Greene stands out as an aspirational role model to every one of us, paving the way towards much needed diversity across the sciences, across the country, and across the globe. It is a real privilege to be able to join you today in further recognizing the inspiring achievements and influential career of Dr. Washington Greene through the National Historic Chemical Landmarks designation. In closing, I note again that this is the 100th landmark that ACS has designated. It is a special delight that Dr. Washington Greene is receiving the first Centurion Award recognition. Congratulations on this honor for Wayne State University, for Dow, and for Dr. Bettye Washington Greene. So thank you so much.
So, well, finally, I would like to introduce Dr. Aveda Williams again. She is the director of the Office of Inclusion and the HR director for talent at Dow. She's also the person who created the Dow Best Symposium, which I'm also a beneficiary. So thank you very much, Dr. Aveda Williams.
Well, good day, everyone. I'm going to try that again. Good day, everybody. Good day. Listen, I know we are nearing the end of the program, and I am not a preacher, nor am I a preacher's kid like Dr. Phillips, but I've been to a lot of church. And I know that when you are at the end, blessed are the short-winded, for they shall be invited back. And so thank you for the brief introduction. On behalf of Team Dow, I am so incredibly honored to be here today. I've been a lot of places this week. And when they talked to me about this week, the fact that I would land in Detroit for this moment in history, this moment in time, I said I would not miss it. This is for me, not just a professional privilege. It is a personal honor. My good friend, Dr. Collins, used the word inspiration, but the other word that we've been using all afternoon is that Dr. Bettye Washington Greene was a pioneer. And I think when we think about that word, we use it a lot, and it might be strange to some, because if you think about the word pioneer, perhaps a different image may come to mind than the one you've been seeing all afternoon. Perhaps you think about early settlers in some like covered old school wagon crossing the American frontier. But for me, as a Black woman who happens to hold a Ph.D., as a Black woman who happens to hold a Ph.D. in physical chemistry, as a Black woman who happens to hold a Ph.D. in physical chemistry, who has enjoyed a 21-year career at Dow, when I think of the word pioneer, I think of Dr. Bettye Washington Greene. She broke ground in the field of chemistry. She pioneered new lines of research. As the first Black female chemist at Dow and one of the first in our industry, she pioneered new territory for women, for African Americans, for marginalized groups in our company and in STEM fields. She pioneered through the power of her mind, yes, but also through her determination and through her resolve. And of course, through her passion for science and for innovation. You've heard her story here this afternoon. This passion and dedication carried her through the 1950s and the 1960s. And let's be honest, if we can think back to then, and Dr. Phillips talked to us a little bit about this today, for a Black woman in science at that time, it couldn't have been the easiest time to succeed. And it certainly couldn't have been the easiest time to start. She was an alumna of this great institution, Wayne State University, earning her Ph.D. in physical chemistry in 1965, 10 years before I ever came to this earth. The very same year, she published her doctoral dissertation, and she joined Dow in the research laboratory in Midland, Michigan. Her work spoke for itself. She was promoted again. She published her work along the way. She stayed with Dow for 25 years. She contributed to chemistry, impacted our culture, and changed our company, and frankly, I would say changed our world before she retired in 1990. And I was thinking about this as I wrote these remarks on the way down from Midland this morning. In 1990, I was actually taking my first chemistry class as a sophomore in high school. And so I am well aware that in many ways, I am an extension of Dr. Bettye Washington Greene's legacy. 40 years before I ever stepped foot on a Dow campus, she was there, demonstrating that people who looked like me could not only get a PhD in chemistry, but could pioneer a successful career in research and in industry. Because of her and others like Dorothy Phillips here today, who broke ground before me, I was able to enjoy the first decade of my career in research and development at Dow. And that was before I made what some would call the quantum leap over into the business of people. And now I get the opportunity every single day to build on that legacy through the work of inclusion, diversity, and equity at Dow. Now, there's this famous photo that when you think of Dr. Bettye Washington Greene, it is sort of always floating around. I don't think it's on the screen, but I think it's on the cover of your program. It was on the cover of Dr. Collins' talk. We saw it there, where she is sitting at the instrument. She's got both hands resting on the instrument. And when we think of her, we always think about that photo. I've seen it all over. But for me, when I look at that photo, I see her eyes looking out. And for some, that may look like just, a pose that she's making, and perhaps that's true. But not only is she looking out at us, to me, she has this look of curiosity, this sort of questioning look on her face. I've looked at the photo many times myself, and, when I see it, I think, okay, Alvita, this sister is looking back at you in time, and she's saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing about your life? What are you doing about your work? What are you doing to advance others? Every time I walk past or I enter into the Bettye Washington Greene conference room at Dow's global headquarters, and I was just there for a meeting last week, I get reminded of the weight of responsibility, the awesome opportunity, and frankly, the obligation that I have in my own small way to carry the torch. And without fail, when I walk past that conference room or enter it, I see that curiosity, the questioning that comes through in that picture. The questions flow in my head. What intentional actions are you taking? What difference are you making? What legacy are you leaving? And so I challenge you all the same as you look at the cover of your programs today, as you listened to the talks, I challenge you to do the same. Remember that what we're doing here today is not just some plaque on a wall. This is not just even the ACS National Chemical Landmark. It is deep appreciation, deep admiration, deep respect for a pioneer who built bridges and knocked down walls for us all to be here today. It is a reminder for me, and hopefully a reminder for you, of the obligation that we all have, the obligation that each of us has to make our workplaces and to make our world better for those that come behind us. Thank you.
So I apologize. I'll have to ask you to stand up again. So I'd like to invite Dr. Angela Wilson and Dr. Dorothy Phillips and everyone who has spoken today for the unveiling ceremony. Thank you. And Dean Atwell too. Sorry, I used to. Yep. How many years is this? Yeah, let's just move it in front.
Look at this. Oh, look at that. That's physics.
Shut off the, yeah. Christy, can you darken the screen?
It's actually going to be what in the entrance. In the entrance, once we get the final flags.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so we just have one final thing. So we'll leave that up so you can come down and take a look at it. I'm gonna play a short video. I think our system was just turned off. All right, I'm just gonna, actually, there's just a picture of Dr. Greene Johnson. I'm just gonna play her remarks for you because it's a movie.
Oh.
Yeah. It doesn't. Okay, great. Okay, so let's see. So we have remarks by Willetta, and then we'll have the film.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to the second installment of the Bettye Washington Greene Endowed Lectureship on the beautiful campus of Wayne State University. I was most fortunate to attend the inaugural lecture in 2022, and so wish that I could be with you today. However, I want you to know I'm grateful to everyone who made this lectureship a reality. To Dr. Chow, who had the advantage to recognize the significance of my mother's work, and then invested her own time and treasure to make that significance known more broadly. To Dr. Sabrina Collins at LTU, chemist and historian who researched the details of mother's work at Dow and sends me wonderful updates of how that knowledge impacts ongoing chemistry processes and new recognitions. To Dow Chemical, where my parents spent the bulk of their career as scientists, and any other sponsors of this lectureship. To the Department of Chemistry at Wayne State University, and of course the administration. And I cannot forget those who took the time to attend this afternoon, you who took the time to celebrate. Now I knew that I had been blessed with a remarkable mom who loved us fiercely. She cared about her extended family. She was a tough teacher, excellent cook, seamstress, gardener. As early as 5 or 6 years old, we knew when the half and half was coagulated and that blood was a colloid. She loved her Ella Fitzgerald and her Aretha Franklin and her Beethoven symphonies, and now so do I. But what I did not know, as a mere computational physicist, were the weighty contributions that Mother, the colloid chemist, made to the chemical community and understanding. That her patents translated to novel, useful, and widely applied techniques in particle size characterization. It took chemists starting at Wayne State to recognize and then megaphone these achievements. And because of this, my family has been gifted with yet another layer to the complexity that is my brilliant, courageous, strongly opinionated, and generous mother. You are the wonderful, astute, kind, and caring village who built this lectureship. You collectively are the griot, as it were, that tells my mother's storied achievements to the next generation of chemists, especially all the wonderful Wayne State University chemistry majors and graduate students in attendance right now. So thank you for honoring my mom, and enjoy the meeting.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Johnson. Okay, we're going to turn it over now. And the last thing is the film. So this was a film created by Sabrina